The notes predicted my love story. Was it fate or something else? It all started with a note. A simple, blue sticky note stuck to my locker. At first, I thought it was a prank, until it predicted exactly what would happen to me that day. And then the next day. And the next. Someone out there knew things about me. Things no one else could possibly know. Including a secret from my childhood that I had completely forgotten. But here's the weirdest part. Every note seemed to lead me to him. Oliver Kane, the boy I'd barely spoken to before all of this started. Now I have to figure out the truth. Is this fate? A time traveler messing with my life? Or something even stranger? One thing's for sure, whoever is sending these notes knows everything about me, including the fact that I might just be falling for him. Stick around to find out what happens next. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment below on what you would do if you got a note from your future self. Silly story begins. Chapter 1. I never put much stock in fate, until the note started appearing. Looking back, I should have known something was up the moment that first blue sticky note magically appeared on my locker, but at the time, I was too busy sprinting to Ms. Rodriguez's third period calculus class, praying I wouldn't walk into one of her infamous pop quizzes unprepared. I barely skimmed the scrawled message before shoving it into my pocket. Your calculator's battery will die today. Here's a spare. You'll need it for questions 4-7. Taped to the note was a tiny CR 2032 battery. My first thought? Who even knows what kind of battery my calculator takes? My second? This was probably some weird prank, but I didn't have time to overthink it. And then, of course, the impossible happened. Midway through the quiz, question 4, to be exact, my calculator flickered once and died. Just like the note had predicted. A cold shiver ran down my spine as I reached into my pocket and felt the crumpled paper and the small, round battery. I stole a glance at Oliver Kane, the effortlessly brilliant student who sat next to me. He was bent over his paper, dark curls falling over his forehead as he worked through the problems with maddening ease, completely unbothered. But just as I turned back to my own paper, I caught the faintest twitch of his lips. Was he smirking? The next morning, another note found me. This time wedged inside my history textbook. Don't forget an umbrella. The weather forecast is wrong again. Also, you might want to bring an extra. Someone special forgot theirs. I rolled my eyes, but tossed a compact umbrella into my bag anyway. The sky outside was blindingly blue. My weather app confirmed a 0% chance of rain. And I was not about to start basing my decisions on cryptic mystery notes. And yet, by lunchtime, the heaviest downpour of the season had ambushed the entire school. I stood under my umbrella, dry and smug, watching as students sprinted across the courtyard, soaked to the bone. That's when Oliver Kane appeared at my side, completely unfazed by the whole situation. Forgot mine, he said casually, stepping under my umbrella like it was the most natural thing in the world. I should have been annoyed. I wanted to be annoyed. But instead, I found myself noticing things, like the way his eyes crinkled slightly when he smiled, or how he somehow smelled like old books and mint tea. The notes kept coming, each one more impossible than the last. The cafeteria serving mystery meat today. I packed an extra sandwich, peanut butter, and banana. No crust, just how you like it. Check your phone at exactly 3:42 p.m. Trust me, you'll want to capture that moment. Don't take the shortcut through the park today. Mrs. Henderson's demon chihuahua got loose again. And then came the note that truly shattered my grip on reality. Tucked inside my favorite novel during study hall, the paper felt heavier than the others, weighted down by something I couldn't quite explain. Remember that time at your 5th birthday party, when you convinced everyone you could talk to squirrels, and that one squirrel actually seemed to answer back? Funny how that memory comes back to you today. I froze. That wasn't just a forgotten childhood story. That was a memory I hadn't even remembered until right now. No one knew about that. Not my best friend Maya. Not my parents. No one. Everything okay? I nearly jumped out of my skin at Oliver's voice. He had appeared beside my library table, watching me with that same unreadable expression, somewhere between amusement and intense focus. Fine, I squeaked, shoving the note into my book like it was evidence in a murder trial. Just studying. He glanced at my book, which was upside down. Interesting way to study. Before I could die of embarrassment, a commotion outside caught my attention. There on the old oak tree outside the library, sat a fat gray squirrel. It was chattering loudly, and for a single disorienting second, I could have sworn it was trying to tell me something. Oliver chuckled softly. Funny how memories come back to you sometimes, isn't it? And then, before I could respond, he was gone. I stared after him, my mind spinning. Either I was losing it, or something seriously strange was happening at Lincoln High. And somehow, Oliver Kane was right in the middle of it. I pulled out my phone and texted Maya. Either I'm going crazy, or I have a time-traveling stalker. Want to help me figure out which? Her response was immediate. OMG, yes. Also, is it that cute boy who keeps staring at you in bio? Because if time travelers look like him, sign me up for some temporal stalking. I hesitated before replying, my fingers hovering over the keyboard, because what I hadn't told Maya, what I couldn't explain, was that I was starting to hope she was right. And what I definitely wasn't going to mention was the new note that had just slipped out of my sleeve. By the way, that squirrel, it really was trying to talk to you. Both times. Chapter 2. Okay, let's review the evidence, Maya declared, spreading out my collection of mysterious notes across her bedroom floor. She'd insisted on treating this like a proper investigation, complete with a conspiracy board that would make any true crime enthusiast proud. First theory, secret admirer. She pinned a note to the board, but not just any secret admirer, one who's either psychic or has access to government weather satellites. I flopped onto her bed, hugging a pillow. Don't forget the time-traveling squirrels. That's theory number 2. She excitedly added another pin. Clearly, you've discovered your secret superpower as the Dr. Dolittle of time. Maya. No, hear me out. She was pacing now, her rainbow-dyed hair bouncing with each step. What if the squirrels are actually your future selves trying to warn you about important life events? I threw the pillow at her. That's ridiculous. Also, why would my future self be a squirrel? Fine. She ducked the pillow and grabbed another note. Theory number 3, aliens. Aliens, I repeated flatly. Think about it. Who else would have such advanced technology to predict the future? Plus, she waggled her eyebrows. It would explain why Oliver Kane is so perfectly imperfect. I tried not to blush at the mention of his name. Over the past few weeks, Oliver had developed an uncanny habit of being exactly where I needed him to be, always with some perfectly reasonable excuse. Oh, you're heading to the art supply store? What a coincidence. I need new pencils. Extra chemistry notes? I always make 2 copies. Printer habit. This coffee shop gift card? Won it in a raffle. But I don't drink coffee. Each time, there was that same hint of a smile, like he was sharing a private joke with himself. Speaking of our potentially extraterrestrial suspect, Maya interrupted my thoughts. Explain this. She held up yesterday's note. Don't study for tomorrow's pop quiz. The topic changed last minute. Focus on Chapter 7 instead. What about it? Sophie, the quiz isn't until tomorrow. How could anyone know it changed unless? She was interrupted by my phone buzzing. It was an email from our history teacher. Class, due to recent curriculum updates, tomorrow's quiz will cover Chapter 7, instead of Chapters 5-6 as previously planned. Maya's conspiracy board crashed to the floor. Okay, I admitted. That's weird. Weird. This is beyond weird. Maya was practically bouncing. This is like Doctor Who meets Pretty in Pink meets the X-Files. I was about to respond when another note slipped out of my history textbook. Check your old diary from 3rd grade, page 17. You'll want to see this before tomorrow. Maya peered over my shoulder. 3rd grade? You still have that? I did. Hidden in the back of my closet was a glitter-covered notebook with Sophie's top secret thoughts. Keep out. Written in wobbly letters. I hadn't opened it in years. Page 17 was dated March 15th. Exactly 12 years ago tomorrow. Dear Diary, today I met a boy at the park who said he was from the future. He knew everything about me, but when I asked him his name, he just smiled and said you'll figure it out when you're ready. He had really nice eyes that looked like they were laughing all the time. The entry ended there, complete with a doodle of a mysterious stick figure boy with curly hair. Sophie? Maya's voice was unusually serious. Doesn't Oliver have eyes that look like they're laughing? Yeah. I closed the diary. But that's impossible. He would have been 3 years old 12 years ago. Unless. Don't say it. Unless he really is. Maya, I swear. A time traveler. She threw her hands up triumphantly. Or an alien. Or a time-traveling alien. Or. I grabbed another pillow to shut her up. But my mind was racing. Because there was something I hadn't shown Maya. Something I couldn't explain. This morning's note. Written in handwriting that looked suspiciously like my own. Remember the boy in the park? Look at Oliver's left wrist tomorrow. He still has the friendship bracelet you made him. The one you forgot about until now. I glanced at my own wrist, where a faded thread of blue and gold still clung to my skin. The other half of a matching set I suddenly remembered making for a mysterious boy whose face I couldn't quite recall. A boy with laughing eyes. Maya was still rattling off theories, each one wilder than the last. But I wasn't listening anymore. Because tomorrow in history class, I was going to have a very interesting conversation with Oliver Kane about a 12-year-old friendship bracelet that I'd only just remembered making. And somehow, I had a feeling he'd been waiting 12 years for me to ask. Chapter 3. I had it all planned out. I would calmly approach Oliver after history class, show him the friendship bracelet, and demand answers. Simple, right? Yeah, about that. What actually happened was me practically body-checking him into the empty chemistry lab during lunch break, after spending the entire morning watching him deliberately avoid rolling up his sleeves. Show me your wrist, I demanded, trying to sound authoritative while simultaneously barricading the door with a chair. Oliver raised an eyebrow, looking annoyingly composed for someone who'd just been ambushed. Hello to you too, Sophie. Your wrist. Left one. Now. He leaned against a lab table, that infuriating almost smile playing at the corners of his mouth. You know, in about 3 years, you're going to look back at this moment and laugh. Wait, what? Actually, he continued conversationally, you're going to write about it. Something about how cute I looked when I was trying not to spoil the surprise. My carefully prepared interrogation crumbled. How could you possibly know what I'm going to write? Because I've read it. He finally rolled up his left sleeve, revealing a faded but familiar blue and gold bracelet, just like you're going to read it. And then write notes to help me make sure this moment happens exactly the way it's supposed to. I stared at the bracelet, the perfect match to mine, and felt my world tilt sideways. That's impossible, I whispered. Says the girl who thought she could talk to squirrels. Wait, how did you know about that? Unless, the pieces started falling into place. The boy in the park. That was you? Technically, it was future me. Or will be future me. Tenses get a bit complicated when you're dealing with temporal loops. I sank onto the nearest stool, my legs suddenly unable to hold me up. You're saying, what exactly are you saying? Oliver, or whoever he was, sat down across from me. I'm saying that in the future, we're together. And you, future you, wrote a diary about how we met. About all these little moments that made you fall in love with me, including how I mysteriously knew everything about you before we really knew each other. Because you read about it in my diary? Which I haven't written yet. Exactly. He grinned. So when I found that diary years from now, I decided to follow the script. Make sure everything happened the way it was supposed to. I rubbed my temples. This is insane. You expect me to believe that you've been orchestrating this whole thing based on my future diary entries? Not exactly. At first, I was just following what was written. The notes, the coincidences, being in the right place at the right time. His expression softened. But somewhere along the way, I stopped checking the diary. Because I didn't need it anymore. Why not? Because I was already falling for you. The real you. Not just the you I'd read about. Whoa. Oh. I opened my mouth to respond. But what came out was, if this is real, prove it. Tell me something that's going to happen right now. He checked his watch. In about 30 seconds, Maya is going to burst through that door, because she followed us here. She's going to trip over the chair you put there, knock over a rack of test tubes, and shout I knew it, before she even hits the ground. That's oddly specific. It's one of my favorite parts in your diary, especially the part where you write about how red your face gets when the door flew open, sending the chair skidding. Maya appeared in a blur of rainbow hair and flailing limbs. True to prediction, her foot caught the chair, sending her spinning into the test tube rack. I knew it, she shouted from the floor, surrounded by rolling test tubes. I could feel my face burning. Just like that, Oliver murmured, looking entirely too pleased with himself. Maya scrambled up, pointing at Oliver accusingly. You're a time traveler, or an alien, or a he's my future boyfriend. I interrupted, surprising myself. Apparently. What? Maya's shriek probably broke several of the remaining test tubes. Like, from the actual future? With time machines and hover cars and, with a diary, Oliver corrected. Sophie's diary. Which she's going to write about all of this. Maya turned to me with the biggest grin I'd ever seen. So when you write this diary, can you mention that I want a winning lottery ticket? Are next week's pop quiz answers? Or, actually, Oliver cut in, there's one more thing you should know. He pulled out a worn notebook from his bag. Not all the notes came from Sophie's diary. I felt my heart skip. What do you mean? Some of them. He hesitated for the first time since this conversation began. Some of them came from me. Future me, writing to past me, warning myself not to mess this up. He handed me the notebook, and I recognized the handwriting from some of the notes, different from mine, but somehow familiar. Opening it, I read, Dear past me, when you find her diary and read about how you changed her life, you'll want to follow every word exactly. Don't. Some moments need to be yours. Trust yourself to fall in love with her your own way. P.S. Yes, you still need to warn her about Mrs. Henderson's chihuahua. Some things are just destiny. I looked up at Oliver, this impossible boy who had apparently crossed time itself, just to meet me properly, and felt something shift in my chest. So, I said slowly, if you're not following the diary anymore, what happens next? He smiled that maddening smile. I have no idea. Want to find out? Before I could answer, another note fluttered down between us, one that neither of us had written yet. Maya snatched it up before either of us could move. It says, "You already know the answer." She looked between us with wide eyes. Okay, this is officially the most romantic thing that's ever happened in a chemistry lab. Also, I think I'm sitting in spilled hydrochloric acid. As we helped Maya up and assessed the damage to both the lab and her genes, I caught Oliver's eye. He was looking at me like I was a puzzle he couldn't wait to solve, even though he allegedly already knew the ending. And somehow, that made me want to write a whole new story, one that even future us hadn't read yet. Chapter 4. Here's the thing about finding out your maybe boyfriend has been following instructions from your future self. It really messes with your head. For the next week, I avoided Oliver completely, which, let me tell you, is not easy when the universe itself seems determined to push you together. I switched routes between classes, ate lunch in the library, and even faked a cold to skip bio lab. The notes kept coming anyway. You're overthinking this. Also, you forgot your lunch money. That alternate route you're taking is going to make you late. Again. The library chair you're about to sit in has wet paint on it. I ignored them all. Mostly. Okay. I did check the library chair. It had wet paint. Maya, naturally, thought I was being ridiculous. Let me get this straight, she said during one of our emergency bathroom conferences. You're avoiding him because you think his feelings aren't real, even though he literally told you he stopped following the diary because he was already falling for you. I slumped against the bathroom wall. It's not that simple. It actually is that simple. You're just making it complicated because you're scared. I'm not scared, I protested. I'm just processing. Processing what? The fact that you have written proof that you end up happy together. That's exactly the problem. I threw my hands up. How do I know if anything is real or if we're just following some cosmic script? What if we only end up together because we know we are supposed to end up together? Maya rolled her eyes so hard I worried they might get stuck. You know what I think? I think you're not actually worried about his feelings. I think you're worried about yours. What's that supposed to mean? It means you're freaking out because you already liked him before you knew about all this future stuff. And now you don't know if you like him because you're supposed to or because you just do. I opened my mouth to argue, then closed it again. Because annoyingly, impossibly, Maya was right. I had liked Oliver. The way he always helped other students without making a big deal about it. How he could explain complicated theories in simple terms without being condescending. The little half smile he got when he was trying not to laugh at something in class. I'd noticed all these things before the note started. Before I knew about diaries, or time loops, or destiny. It doesn't matter, I said finally. I need time to think. Time? Maya snorted. Honey, your whole problem is about time. As if on cue, a note slid under the bathroom door. When you're done hiding in the bathroom, I'll be in the courtyard. No diary entries about this conversation, by the way. This one's all us. Maya picked up the note and smirked. Well, would you look at that? Someone's going off script. I'm not going, I declared. Fine. Maya gathered her things. But just so you know, it's raining in the courtyard. And that boy you're not in love with is probably standing out there getting soaked, waiting for you to realize that some things are worth risking, even if you don't know the ending. How do you know it's raining? She pointed to the window. Because I have eyes. Also, because he's already out there. I rushed to the window. Sure enough, there was Oliver, standing in the pouring rain like some kind of ridiculous romantic hero from a movie. Oh, for heaven's sake, I muttered. Go get him, time traveler's girlfriend. He's not a time traveler. Whatever you say, Maya called after me as I ran out. Just remember to mention my future lottery numbers in that diary. The rain was cold, but my face felt hot as I burst into the courtyard. Oliver stood exactly where Maya said he would be, completely drenched, and looking unfairly attractive for someone who resembled a drowned cat. You know, he said conversationally, in all the versions of this moment I read about, I never understood why I chose to do this in the rain. Now I get it. Why's that? Because you look really pretty when you're trying not to smile at how stupid I'm being. And damn it, I was trying not to smile. You're going to catch pneumonia, I said instead. Probably. Want to know a secret? He stepped closer. There's nothing in that diary about what happens next. No notes, no warnings, no script to follow. Just me, standing here, completely clueless about whether you're going to kiss me or push me into that puddle. Those are my only options? Well, you could also stand there overthinking everything until we both freeze to death. But I'm hoping you'll pick one of the first two. I looked at him, really looked at him, at the boy who had apparently crossed time itself just to meet me, only to throw away the manual when it mattered most. What if we mess it up? I whispered. What if we change the future? He reached out and tucked a wet strand of hair behind my ear. Then we'll write a new one. And standing there in the rain, with my shoes soaked and my heart pounding, I made a choice that wasn't written in any diary. I pushed him into the puddle. Then, while he was still sputtering in surprise, I kissed him. Because sometimes the best stories are the ones you write yourself. Chapter 5. You know what's weird about dating someone who supposedly read about your future together? Sometimes they still manage to surprise you. Like right now, watching Oliver rummage through his backpack with increasing panic during our study session. Looking for this? I held up his meticulously written physics notes. How did you? I grinned. Found a note this morning saying you'd forget them. Figured I'd better bring a copy. He stared at me. You wrote me a note? Well, future me did, I think. Unless future you wrote it pretending to be future me. In which case we really need to establish some guidelines about temporal impersonation. Oliver laughed, pulling me closer on the library couch. You know, I like that we're both in on it now. Makes the whole time loop thing feel more like a shared joke than a cosmic conspiracy. Speaking of cosmic conspiracies, I pulled out another note I'd found that morning. Care to explain this one? The note read, "Don't let Oliver study for the physics final. Trust me on this one." He read it and frowned. That's not my handwriting. Or yours? I know. I sat up straighter. It's Maya's. Right on cue, Maya materialized from behind a bookshelf, nearly knocking over a globe. Before you guys freak out, I can explain. This should be good, Oliver muttered. Maya plopped down across from us, her eyes sparkling with that manic energy she got whenever she had a particularly crazy theory. So, remember how you guys explained the whole future diary time loop thing? You mean last month when you made us diagram it on your conspiracy board? I asked. Exactly. Well, I got thinking, if Sophie's going to write a diary that helps you two get together, and Oliver's future self writes notes to his past self, who's to say the rest of us can't join in? Oliver pinched the bridge of his nose. Maya. No, hear me out. I did the math. If Sophie doesn't let you study for the physics final, you'll get exactly 3 questions wrong. And why would I want that? Because, Maya was practically bouncing. Those are the exact same 3 questions Sophie's going to get right, which means you'll tie for top score, which means you'll both get to give a speech at graduation, which means, I interrupted, you've been writing notes pretending to be from the future. Maya's smile faltered. Maybe, I should have been angry, but instead, I found myself laughing. Because of course Maya would find a way to insert herself into our time-traveling romance. Of course she would try to orchestrate the perfect ending. Oliver shook his head, but he was smiling too. You know what? Keep the note. Maybe some futures are worth taking a chance on, even if they come from overenthusiastic best friends instead of temporal paradoxes. Maya beamed. So you'll bomb the last 3 questions? Absolutely not. Worth a shot. She bounced up. By the way, you might want to move. Someone's about to spill coffee all over that couch in about 30 seconds. We jumped up just as a freshman tripped nearby, his coffee sailing through the air and landing exactly where we'd been sitting. Oliver and I stared at Maya. She shrugged. What? I can't actually see the future. I just noticed him walking around with a totally full cup and his shoelaces untied. Sometimes you don't need time travel to predict what's going to happen. Sometimes you just need to pay attention. And somehow, that was exactly what I needed to hear. Because the truth is, I'd spent so much time worrying about whether our relationship was predestined that I'd almost missed the real magic. How we chose each other. Notes or no notes, future or no future. Epilogue. 5 years later. And that, I concluded, raising my glass at our 5-year high school reunion, is how I managed to fail spectacularly at the last 3 questions of the physics final. The crowd around us laughed, while Oliver tried to hide his grin behind his drink. What happened? Someone asked. Did you get nervous? I exchanged a look with Oliver. Let's just say I had some very distracting notes. Later, as we slow danced under the cheesy disco ball, Oliver leaned in close. You still owe me for that physics final, by the way. Hey, you're the one who decided to follow Maya's note. Only because you looked so cute when you were concentrating. I couldn't help getting those questions wrong. I rolled my eyes. You're such a liar. You got them wrong because you genuinely didn't know the answers. That's not what it says in your diary. Whoa. And what does my diary say? He pulled me closer, that familiar half-smile playing on his lips. "Why don't you write it and find out?" From across the room, Maya gave us an enthusiastic thumbs up. She was still convinced she was responsible for our perfect romantic ending, and maybe she was, in her own way. But the truth is, our story was never about the notes, or the diary, or the time loop. It was about two people who chose to love each other, even when they knew the ending, especially when they didn't. And as for that mysterious final note that neither of us wrote, the one that said we already knew the answer? Well, some questions are better left unanswered. Although I did notice Maya stuffing something suspiciously note-shaped into her time capsule right before graduation. Something about instructions for Pass Me about how to get my best friends together. But that's another story entirely. Alright, let's settle this once and for all. If you found a note from your future self, would you follow the script or change the course of your own story? Drop your answers in the comments, and let's see who's a fate follower and who's ready to rewrite the future.